Well, good day, everyone. It's the Two Ordinary Cops, and we are back yet again. For a episode, I think it's 112. Damo, mate, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Mate, yeah, cracking along, actually. Going pretty well. Busy, but as always, and I have got a few people to get back to. I do apologise. As soon as I get a few spare minutes, I jump on and message back and forth. But yeah, mate, and you're back home, I see.
I'm home again, mate. Yeah, home for the week. Not much though. I'm out and about. Got a few other jobs to do, but I've got to put my farming hat back on. Do a few jobs around the place. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'll be back on the road. I'm away for 3 months solid, including a trip back to the territory. So the last week of March, I'll be at Uluru doing some fight training. But yeah, before that, I'm going from Lithgow to Mackay to Uluru and then home again, and then God knows where from there. So now it's good to get around the country, but it makes it difficult to really concentrate on the podcast. So
Yeah.
we're getting there. We're getting there. But a
We
good
are.
subject, mate. You made a good suggestion for tonight because we've got obviously more people in the pipeline that we want to talk to. But in the meantime, people ask us questions, and it's important for us to punch a few out with the two of us. So we've got
Yeah.
a couple that we might see if we cover two, maybe one. So what are we on about today, mate?
Well, mate, we're going to start off with talking about detectives. It's something like we've touched on, we've spoken about investigations and so on and so forth, but we haven't really gone into the nitty-gritty of what a detective really does or what their day might involve. We've mentioned bits and pieces, but I think it's probably important for those. And look, I had new recruits coming in that, just out of the college that trained that wanted to become detectives. So, as because I'd already done I was already doing my detectives then. I used to try and guide them into the more serious investigations and all that sort of stuff, so they could actually, get a bit more hands on and introduce them to some of the detectives like yourself who were working around, Catherine at the time. So, mate, but you want to kick it off and basically just discuss basically what a detective is, and then after that, if we got time, we also want to give a shout out. I suppose a bit of a shout out, but also talk about some people that just went the extra mile in the job. Went beyond what the job role really was because they just had a passion for policing and helping people. So,
Yeah.
but mate, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, for sure. So I think if we want to go back and talk about like what a detective, it makes sense that people know, well, what's a detective? You're all coppers, aren't you? And
Yeah,
the answer is yes, and that's why it's a bit of a strange thing, and it goes back a long way. There's a lot of history behind what is a detective, um, and basically, I think it goes back probably to the UK. It would go back to when there was an investigative service, basically, and I don't know whether they were serving members or police that used to provide a service to the police, the uniformed police. Um, but essentially, where detectives came from was that there was a requirement for thorough investigation into serious and complex matters that went beyond calling the police and two bobbies or a bobby would turn up. So the general duties police could turn up and solve problems and deal with things as they were occurring and conduct basic investigations. But they discovered pretty early on that they needed more specialised, more thorough, more dedicated police who just dealt with one critical area. And yeah, the history of it goes back a long way. So basically, the reason, and people go, why don't they wear uniforms? And that goes back as well. And people, confuse plainclothes police with undercovers and all the rest of it. And I think we can explain all that. So
yeah,
taking it right back, what would occur back in the day? And if we go back to old London, there might have been a pickpocket or something like that. Well, a local bobby could conduct a low-level investigation and find out who might have pickpocketed or know from their local patch. Talk to people and find out who might be doing the crime and carry out that sort of thing. But if it came to something bigger, like a big robbery or a homicide or something like that, that required lots and lots of man hours to actually investigate the matter, it got to the point where it needed to take those bobbies off the road, and they couldn't do it. They had to be there. They had to be that constant presence on the road, and that rings true today. You still have to have your uniformed cops on the ground doing their day in day out stuff. I know modern reporting requirements have stuffed up the patrolling a little bit. Like you don't see police just patrolling as much as you used to, but um, the idea was that you have that permanent presence, and then you can carry out discrete investigation in the background. And that's
Yeah,
where what they did was they wore business attire because they were just going about business. So that's why they still wear suits. It's almost a bit of a, in a lot of jurisdictions, fully designated detectives still wear business suits, and the reason for that is it's tradition. For one, they always wore a suit, and it also formalises their role a little bit. But basically, what happened, and it would have been a lot of on-the-job training back in the day, where someone might have, a uniformed police officer might have had an in to some kind of job, some kind of big problem that they had information, human sources, which basically means there are members of the community who are comfortable talking to that one particular person. So as a result, a detective unit would pull that person in, and that would be their entry basically into the investigation branch, and they would go from there. So it a lot steeped a lot in history. In modern day, it's very similar, same, but a little bit different. So now it's still drawn from the rank and file, but basically the roles are different. They're not, one's not better than the other. They're just different roles. Detectives get a lot more time to be a lot more analytical and carry out a lot more um, all kinds of different methodologies and things like that can gather evidence, gather information, follow intelligence, and lead down the path to working out who's done something. So identifying offenders where we don't have the offender known, and also compiling that evidence using all kinds of different means. And when we don't talk about methodologies, but all different things. People know that police can use some kind of information from telephones. Um,
yeah,
it's pretty well known that listening devices and things like that can be installed. So detectives have the time and the charter basically to go out and do that kind of work. And that's basically the difference. That's why detectives exist. When it comes down to police powers, like do they have any more powers? In most jurisdictions, they certainly don't. They run on the exact same legislation. They are still a member of the police force. General orders generally cover what detectives are. So now I'll talk about a detective designation. A designation is basically you've ticked the boxes to be qualified and have proven yourself in the workplace to carry out investigative work basically independently. So you still work as a team, but you are now considered qualified to carry out that role, and you can do it by yourself if you need to in lower end jobs. Obviously, with big jobs, you need lots of people anyway because the sheer workload, you need more than one. But
yeah,
that would be the difference. So you sort of have your plainclothes detective, plainclothes constables, where people have come across and are doing time in the investigative unit, basically earning their detective designation. Normally, there will be some kind of course, a training program that you will go through where you have to cover off on certain skill sets that a detective will hold. And once all of that is achieved and you get yourself gazetted or posted to a unit that is considered an investigative unit in the Northern Territory anyway, you are then eligible to be granted your detective designation. And there was a fair bit of there's a bit to that, just quietly. That
yeah,
was a hell of a thing to become a detective. I was very, very proud to become a detective.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mate,
What do you think,
it's
mate?
yeah, mate. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, becoming a detective it changed the requirements changed slightly. I think from when you did yours. You did yours what 2010.
Yeah.
I think it was, and I did mine 2012. And they called us the guinea pigs because they were trialing a new period. I think you had to sit an exam to basically go into the course, whereas we had to submit a workbook about investigations that we've done to get into it. I mean, pretty much either way, it was probably quite difficult unless you've been a plainclothes connie for a while to get those more serious investigations. You had to cover off on quite a number of stuff that I had to do to get into it. But the exam was pretty hard too, I believe. I don't think I can't remember sitting the exam. Of course, going through the course I did, but not beforehand. I can't. Oh, maybe ours
No.
was a little bit. I can't really remember.
So basically, the way that, and this is moving on from what is a detective, this is talking about the pathway that we went through, and it's
Yeah.
interesting that both of ours were different because I was the last of the old style
Yeah.
detective training, which was literally 2010 was the last old detective training course as they had been for some period of time before that. And basically, what it was people who had got secondments. So the first point of call for a GD's copper, so a uniformed police officer, or a person from another specialised role, their first port of call to get into to a detective training course is that they had to get a secondment across to an investigative unit. Now, I was lucky enough. I've explained how that happened in 2009, late 2009. A couple of positions came up in Catherine Investigation Unit, and myself and another fellow moved across. And then you start working. You basically begin working in that role, and you, apart from the fact we were new and we were learning, once people have been there for a while, you couldn't tell exactly who was designated and who wasn't because everyone worked together. But what would happen is there would be an expectation that if you're in an investigative unit and you're chasing a gazetted position, that you would carry out you would do detective training as part of that. Um, so the first tick in the box was that you are already either on permanent secondment or long-term secondment, or you are gazetted into a position that has plainclothes areas where non-designated detectives can get a job in that, and that's normally what would be considered for the detective training course. From there, you have to apply for and then sit the detective training course entrance exam, which in 2010 was considered the hardest exam in the police force, as far as the hardest academic exam in the police force. It went for hours. It was a 3 or 4 hour exam, and it was just, yeah. It was if you didn't study, you would not pass. It doesn't unless you were an absolute academic freak and knew legislation and general orders inside out, back to front. You would not pass that. There's no way. So we were basically given a study guide, and the study guide was about 300 pages thick. And they said, just know everything in that perfectly. And we're like, oh, yeah, cool, no worries. Yeah. So anyway, I I remember we all sat it down in Catherine. There was a heap of us. There was probably, I don't know, oh, I can't remember. There'd be maybe 6 or 7 of us sat it. And I think 4 of us passed. And
Yeah.
anyway, it was, I passed by the skin of my teeth. I think it was a 70% pass rate, and I got about 73. So
Was it?
anyway,
Yeah.
but all
Yeah.
of us got about that. I don't think anyone got an extraordinary high mark. Anyway, and that was the gatekeeper. So then there was only a certain number of positions on the detective training course. Given that we were from a regional area, we were pretty lucky. We all got put on the course. So all 4 of us from Catherine went. Um, anyway, we started the course in October, I believe, October 2010. And it was 8 weeks from memory. It was either 8 or 10. I can't remember exactly. But from the minute we got in there, it was very high level. The first week or 2 was really high level legislation that was relevant to investigative roles. So above and beyond what you learn at the college, it was really detective centric legislation. But the learning curve was super steep, and the learning expectation was extremely high. So basically, it was, well, you were taught that yesterday. You should now be a subject matter expert on that. So our exams that we sat, they were brutal because it was everything we were taught, and it's like the old saying, drinking from a fire hose. You can't
Yeah.
consume the amount of information coming at you, but you're meant to. Um, so yeah, anyway, it was just a lot of study. There was a lot of study, and back then there was still a pretty strong old drinking culture in the investigative unit. So there was a little bit of an expectation that you do socialise as well, and that was deliberate because good detectives were considered people. So a good detective, there was a time, and it's not condoned now, but it's not all that long ago when detectives would actually hang out in a pub and be drinking beer, sitting around drinking.
Yeah.
They would be expected on a Friday night to be down at the local watering hole having a beer, still in their plainclothes work gear, and people would come up to them and say, oh, I can have a quiet word to you, or come for a quick smoke, I've got something to tell you. And all that would go on. And there was still an expectation that we would do that sort of thing. Not necessarily be on duty down the pub drinking and just taking the mickey, but there was an expectation that we could, in a relaxed environment, have a conversation with criminals and gain information from that, gain intelligence. submit what we call intelligence reports, or information reports, sorry, from the field, and cultivate human sources. So have people who you could ring who might know a certain person or whatever else. You needed to be able to make friends with people, and not even friends. You needed to be able to become acquainted with people quite quickly. So that was all deliberate. Um, After the first couple of weeks, we moved through talking to the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court came on a Sunday and spoke to us for about 5 hours, just about case law and the role of the courts and the role of the police and delivering information to the courts, and just on a much deeper level, but also one to one. And then we had our blocks, our big investigative blocks, which were, we had Coronial Week, which was just insane. So basically, you have to investigate a coronial investigation, which an investigation that would normally take months. You got to do it in a week, and you have to ask the right questions to get the right information back, and basically compile your coronial brief, and then submit that at the end of the week. And it really came down to comparing it to the outcome of the inquest and make sure that you're on the right track the whole way. Absolutely exhausting. We're up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning trying to do it, trying to do the work, and then getting up in the morning and actually working, to going to lessons day to day. We're on a course. We're on a very intense course. But yeah, the big standout of the week is what's called the major crime exercise. And from memory, and it's such a long time ago. You got to remember, this is 16 years ago, and a lot's happened since then. So, um, well, I remember we were there was a social function of some kind. We were all having a drink and all the rest of it, and the idea was that everyone knew that the penny was about to drop. We were about to get called out, and I'll never forget. We basically got called that night and given a quick heads up, and we'd all had a few drinks. About 10 o'clock at night, we'd all had, at the police club as expected, having a few drinks, and the call came through, and they said, "Right, everyone on the D's course, can you please come over this way?" And we're like, "Ah, shit, here we go." And they didn't call us out that night. I think it was the next morning, but they said there's been an incident come through. These are the first reports, and it was an exercise. Our suggestion is you stand down now, get some sleep, and we'll kick off in the morning. And then there was a call out in the morning. There was actually a physical, your mobile phone rang at your accommodation. You said, "We've got a crime scene at this location. You got to report to this location, report to this person." And it was just a mock crime scene on the college grounds. And basically, you had about 15 minutes to get to this particular location where staff was set up with a scenario. And the first one was a crime scene. So things like talking to the shift supervisor, the general duty shift supervisor was already there. There might have been a crime response team that have just come across, babysat the scene for a minute, but they're handing it to you. You need to do things like ensure that the crime scene is correctly contained, that you're happy that it's in circulating everything you wanted in circulated. Happy that the sergeant's got his crews. He's also talking to us like, "I need to get going. I need my guys back. Can I have my guys?" It's like, "No, you can't have your guys. I need crime scene guards. That's not me. I'm going to do something else." So they introduce you to that already, that ability to come in, even though you might not outrank the person, you have to go, "No, I'm sorry, Sarge, I need those guys for now. Unless we can get some relief, I need crime scene guards. They can't go anywhere." And then it'll be organising what forensics is prioritised, and getting a more general briefing on the job, and then you're running with it. You're running with that job. It's computer, it's desktop based, but they will send you out to scenes, crime scenes as you go. They'll get you to watch a mock interview, and you've got to pick out key points and get lines of inquiry from key interviews and things like that. It was done very well without having a full team of investigators and crime scene guards and all the rest of it and everything else real. It was done really well, I thought.
Yeah, it's so yeah. Your course was slightly different than the way ours was run. So basically, we did a minor exam, but I don't think the exam was quite as hard as your one. But we had to submit a workbook, and the workbook was quite a few pages, and we had to basically cover off a lot of the more serious or technical investigations that we'd done. We had to, of course, give evidence of promise numbers, which is the case numbers for those, so they could look them up and all that sort of stuff. So that was quite, I suppose, it took you a bit of time to get all that stuff together, and you had to go back through the system and try and remember the jobs and all that sort of stuff. Our course, yours was 8 weeks, ours was five, I
Yeah.
think. So yeah,
It was 8
and
or
we
10.
didn't.
I can't remember. It was either
Oh,
8 or 10. I had 10 in my head for some reason. It was bloody
was
long
it?
time anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and ours, yeah, ours was. I'm pretty sure it was five. And but yeah, we didn't get that scenario that you got. It was done slightly differently, which is a bit of a shame actually. I was looking forward to get on the yeah a drink with everybody, not until the end of the course. But mind you, I was still at the police club quite regularly. I did it the old school way,
Yeah.
catching up with Bob Rennie and Tony Henrys and everybody that was up there. Um, but we also like there's also a lot of other things you learn in there, and I'm not sure we got media training,
Yeah.
how
Yep.
to talk to the media, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, crime scene. You seem to go into everything in a lot more detail, and it is like you said, the information that's coming in is like trying to drink out of a fire hydrant. There's so much stuff coming in. We extradition warrants, like
Yep.
more that sort of stuff that the detectives do. And you've kind of be really you got to be on your game, because it is a big like having your detectives is a very very big deal. Um, there's people you've basically got to get signed off on it. At the end of the day, you've got to pass your exams and get signed off on it. So, and it's a very proud thing to have.
Yeah.
Um, Mine's probably slightly different because I actually did all the training. I did everything, and would have my designation, except I basically went from the end of the course, and because of breaking up with my wife, I got the opportunity to go bush. So the problem is I never sat in a detective role after I passed everything. So
No, so
technically, I
you were
didn't get
never in
a
a position to get a designation.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if I think there was an opportunity, I could have come down to Tennant Creek when you were down there. I got an offer when I was in. If I as soon as I moved down there, I would have got it, but I
Yeah.
just never sat in that role, and that's one thing as well. You have it while you're in that role.
Yeah.
If it's if you go out and come back again, of course you keep it, but it's always there. But you basically have it. You're designated when you're in that role.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. So I'll explain that a bit. So your designation, you never lose your detective designation, but it only applies to your title when you're actually an investigator. So
yeah,
when you're actually in a plainclothes investigation unit, and not just plainclothes, major crash investigators wear uniform and they're designated detectives. Um, it's arguable. They're traffic. Yeah, whatever. That's an argument for another time. But I just stirred up the crashes. No, no, they do it. They're very forensic, that job, very forensic, and there's a lot of investigation to that. But uh, when when you get that designation, it is. I'll just take it back a smidge because we did plain clothes. I'll just finish off how ours work.
yeah,
So we went right through, like you said, all that extradition warrants, all that really Surveillance Devices Act, all that really in
yeah,
depth. We did drug week. Sorry, I completely forgot about that. We did drug week as well, where
yeah,
you go through and really proactive investigative work. So when I say proactive, I mean it's not like someone's reported something to the police and you go and question them. You go and hunt down using human sources to find out what's going on. So you have to piece together with intelligence, and then with intelligence put together a search warrant, execute a search warrant. Now you have offenders. Now you have drugs. You've got your hands on the product. From there, you get further lines of inquiry. So you're the one creating the work. You're not just following a bouncing ball that already exists. You're making the ball bounce. So
yeah,
there's two very different sides of investigative work, and you cover both of them on the D's course. So the end of the detective training course, basically, that's just another tick in the box. So you've passed, you've been selected. Yep, no worries. You passed your exam. You've now done the D's course. Good on you. Then we used to do what we call plainclothes reports. So once you've finished your training, you can do plainclothes reports at any time, but that's when you had to get them all submitted, because if you didn't have all your plainclothes reports in, you couldn't get signed off. Once your plainclothes reports were completed, it took your officer in charge signing off that they were happy for you to receive your detective designation. From the There was a training unit, I can't remember, criminal investigation training unit, SIDU, criminal investigation development
Yeah.
unit. Yeah, so SIDU would then have all that information, including our OIC is okay for it, and then the senior trainer in SIDU would sign off on your detective designation, and then that detective designation will be awarded by the commander of crime command. So that was a big deal. So the commander crime would basically sign off on your gold badge, and then you get it. So how it was presented depended. It basically was unit specific, but I got an email basically saying, "Oh yeah, your detective designation's approved." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then at lunchtime, I think I said, "Oh, I got my designation through." And everyone's like, "Oh shit, bloody good on you, mate. Well done." It's like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
whatever. And then my OIC at the time got wind of that and said, "That's disgraceful." It's right. We're all everyone back to the club at 4 p.m. And he's like, right. And he went and grabbed a badge off someone else. He had a gold badge. He's come over there and got everything sorted. And he's gone, I'm disgusted with the way this has gone. This used to actually mean something. This was a big deal. That we're going to sign off that we're happy for you to investigate the death of another human being, which is what a detective designation is. He goes, but
Yeah.
I'm happy for that, so I'm here. And he handed me someone else's D's badge. And he shook hands and congratulations. He goes, I'll make sure you get yours very bloody quickly. And I did. I think I had it in a day or two. Someone did a trip
Yeah.
to Darwin to get it. So, yeah, it was, yeah, it's a real feather in the cap to get your designation. And that's when you'll see people's title. You've got your rank and then you've got a designation. So
Yeah.
my rank at the end, well, when I actually left, I was detective acting senior sergeant. And that was because I was in charge of a group. It was involved in COVID, but it was an investigative crew. But immediately prior to that, I was detective sergeant within the Strike Force Trident team, which was a plainclothes investigative team. However, when I was an officer, when I was a shift sergeant at Darwin City, I was sergeant. I wasn't detective sergeant, even though I was designated. Um,
Yeah.
I was a I was a uniformed supervisor, so I was not in an investigative role. So I didn't carry my designation at that stage.
Yeah, it's but one of the important things you will get used, especially when you're working on general duties, like you was a sergeant in Darwin. Like even me, I went into the plainclothes role and then came out. At the time, my wife had just finished the course, so she came out as a connie. So I wanted to be back in GDs, and then I went back into crime or plainclothes connie again, and that's when I did my detectives. I went through all the course and all that sort of stuff then. But you will get used because of the higher level of training. It you kind of become very thought upon when the more difficult jobs come in because your higher level of training. Like I know even I basically my opportunity to go out bush was go out bush and help a lot of the stations. There was some more complex investigations out there, but having somebody like me out there that had already gone through the training and done everything, I'd a lot more experience in more serious investigations probably under my belt. So that sort of stuff really helps out. And when you go back into GDs, you can really then pick out people that are also good for, that can become detectives and that have that nous to actually be a detective as well. And you can help them through that and train people a bit better because I mean any experience you get in the police force, it doesn't matter where it comes from. Being a detective, I learned a lot being a police prosecutor.
Yeah,
All that sort of stuff will just gives you so much more. I suppose what would you call it?
experience. It just rounds out your experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just do investigations so much better,
Mm.
and you've just got a much broader field to pull from. You also meet people that are experts in their fields.
Yeah.
Talking about, like you said, you're learning like a fire hydrant. I remember when we did the extradition warrants, Tony Henrys came in and did a talk for 4 hours and did not once refer to a book.
No.
He just did it all off the top of his head. And he spoke to us for 4 hours on extradition warrants. I was just amazed. I was
Yeah.
gobsmacked. and that's the sort of level of people that you're dealing with when I mean, he'd been a detective for years, but he just such a knowledgeable person. Yeah, it was absolutely incredible, and that's the level though that you're talking about when you're talking about detectives. They are
Oh,
just they're
absolutely.
just so much.
Actually, you just reminded me of a very funny thing. You've got obviously extradition. We've spoken about extradition where a person's committed an offence in your jurisdiction, so we're in the Northern Territory, and they've fled to Queensland, New South Wales, another jurisdiction still within Australia or overseas. So what you do then is you're obviously liaising with interstate, and there's got to be similar offences. There's a legal process. There's a reason we train on it for ages. I can't explain it in 5 minutes on a podcast, but basically,
No,
what it allows us to do is to get that person apprehended in that jurisdiction, brought before a court in that jurisdiction, and for a magistrate or a local court judge or Supreme Court judge from that other jurisdiction to remand that person into the custody of an interstate police force to return to face justice at the jurisdiction, at the home jurisdiction. So it's a hell of a process to it. But there's another type of warrant called an extraterritorial warrant, which is
oh
basically
yes,
when there may be evidence of an offence committed in the Northern Territory, but that evidence is in another location, so in another jurisdiction. We can apply for a search warrant through that other jurisdiction, which is a big deal. I've done a couple of them actually
yeah,
because we've had a few people flee either way, but they're extremely hard to get put together because not only do you need an extradition warrant is you need them to go and arrest your bad guy. That's it. An
yeah,
extraterritorial warrant is you need them to go and execute a search warrant and then search the premises for what you want,
yeah. That's right.
return with what evidence they may or may not have, and then present that back to you. And then from there, if the person's on the state, it's a very complicated thing. That's the reason the detective training was a lot, and that was just the training. You then gain a lot of experience as an actual detective, and you do further training. But yeah, it's a lot more complicated than, mate, you're not allowed to drop your old fella out and have a leak outside the pub. Here's a $600 fine. It's a
Yeah,
hell of
that's
a lot
right.
more convoluted. Don't get me wrong, I used to love that sort of work too because it was, just keeping the peace and moving job to job. But
Yeah.
you really put your teeth into detective work. It's really in depth. You're invested massively. It's a lot of man hours. It's very
Oh
complicated.
yeah.
Generally, much more impacted victims, or always more impacted victims, and much more serious offenders who are looking at significant prison time. So it's the meat and potatoes of policing, I reckon.
Oh, definitely, mate. And look, you've got to you've really got to make sure your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted because you are dealing with higher level crime. And you've got to get everything tickety boo to make sure that you get those people put away,
Yeah,
and you don't leave any loopholes, or you've got to close off loopholes in the
yeah.
system because there's always loopholes. So you've just got to work around them and just make sure everything is ticked off. And that's the difference. You also have the time. Well, you talk about time. You're not getting called out to jobs usually when you're in the detective role. If there's a serious incident kick off, of course,
But we
you'll.
were.
Yeah,
That's it. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, it's the old thing. But as a GD's, like you're just responding to everything basically that comes through. Whereas when you're a detective, or working in that field, you're more serious incidents. But you do have your time when you can sit there and methodically go through stuff, and also check with your peers and you throw advice back and forth, and or learned friends, I suppose. It just you're getting information from everybody. You can have time to sit down and have a chat with your sergeant. You can work your time a little bit better. But yeah, like you said, mate, sometimes you just never stopped.
I'll never forget Tennant Creek investigation. We were finalising a running sheet. So it used to be the last thing we'd do. So basically, you'd get the initial job, roll out to crime scene, see what's going on, get forensics examiners, which are not detectives, they're crime scene examiners, totally different thing. You'd get them examining a crime scene, you'd have people that you're interviewing. Um, the main role of detectives was in interviewing witnesses and potential offenders, executing search warrants to gather physical evidence. So I remember we did a job in Tennant Creek where we had a serious harm matter. So someone, I think it was a stabbing or a serious bashing, I can't remember, but we'd investigated that, identified the offender, arrested them, had them in custody. We completed the prosecution file, or a brief of evidence as it's called elsewhere. Submitted that. Custody sergeant had charged them, remanded them in custody to appear in court, and we were reporting through in the internal system what's called a running sheet. And we'd been on duty for about 14 hours, and the shift supervisor walks in. He goes, "Guys, I'm so sorry, but we've got a woman we've just taken up to the hospital. She's saying she's been raped." And it's like, welcome to a brand new day. So we've just been
Yeah,
working
that's
for
right.
14 hours, and our day ain't stopping yet. And I won't
No.
name the guy. There was a fella up from Alice who was relieving, and he spat it. He said, "This is bullshit. I'm exhausted. I need to go to bed." It's like, too bad, mate.
Yeah, yeah,
We're the
that's right.
detectives, you know.
You
So
just Yeah, yeah, you got to do it. You've just got to. It's
yeah,
I look back at actually quite a bit of a funny story involved in this one. But I was working in the family and domestic violence unit, and at the time I was running it, and they basically I could write my own overtime. They just
yeah,
didn't care. It was just so busy. There was so much work to do because we were dealing with every domestic that happened around Catherine. I had to review every domestic that happened around Catherine, and then also we had more serious investigations to do as well. So I was basically starting between 6 and 7 every morning, and I wouldn't finish until probably between 5 and 6 or 6 and 7 at night. I was basically doing 14-hour days or over 12-hour days, every single day of the week, like yeah, Monday to Friday. Um, just a massive amount of hours. It was just absolutely stupid. And the reason
yeah,
I used to go in early, finish late, is because you wouldn't get a phone call usually before 8 o'clock in the morning.
yeah,
So your normal start time was eight, but if you went in early, you'd usually get about an hour. We had a bit of free time to go through your jobs and all this sort of stuff. But there was one call I remember. They were short on a shift in general duties, and they asked me if I wanted to do an overtime shift on the weekend. So I was working all these hours, and then they needed somebody for the weekend, and so I did a Saturday night and work at a night shift. And I'll tell you what, that was a shit night. We destroyed two police cars in one night.
yeah,
We had a guy that did a runner, and yeah, we wrote off a four-wheel drive and a two-wheel drive Hilux in that one incident. And anyway, it was funny. The senior sergeant came in the next morning, and he looks across at me and he goes, "Well, you can go back to crime. You're way too
yeah,
expensive to have on the
yeah.
road."
No, you're gone. Yeah, let's keep it to one car a week, not two a shift, mate. Yeah. Oh yeah,
But but yeah, I mean that's the sort of work hours we used to do, and then like the old street, that was just absolutely nuts. That was 3 weeks of basic 18-hour days or something stupid like that. It was we would have time. So yeah,
yeah,
we would have time. I think we'd finished our shift, and usually we'd just have one beer, and then we'd be off to bed, and then we'd be back up again.
oh yeah.
Basically working through it. The old street was probably one of the biggest ones I was ever involved in. But you had some pretty big ones.
Oh yeah, we had a couple. Nina was another one. That was a murder in Catherine that was just enormous. The Ben Hoffman shooting, it was big, but we had so many people involved in that. They set up rosters, so very quickly they broke that up into projects. So everybody had their own roles and different areas. I was a detective sergeant at that point, so I was given my own role with my crew, and away we went. But we, I was heavily involved in the initial week or so, and then there was a task force set up to deal with that ongoing, and a few Trident guys went across. But I basically went back to my role in Trident because I was the detective sergeant of Trident. So some of our more senior investigators who were still senior constables, they went across and joined major crime on that and stayed on that for some time. But mate, some of the jobs were just enormous. Even jobs that were in remote areas where there's only three of us there. We were seconding whatever keen
Yeah.
junior constables we could get and
Yep.
saying, put a pair of jeans and a bloody button-up shirt on and come in, you're with us. And they're like, okay. And away they'd go, and
Yep.
it was on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we sort of, there was many an extraordinary major crime detective born out of exactly that, where as a very junior constable, they said, you want to come along on this homicide investigation? We just need someone to come and help. We need extra hands. And they're like, yep. And then,
Yep.
maybe 5, 6 to 10 years down the track, they're a very accomplished major crime detective. So um, those little remote areas were where it was at. That was where you were everything. You had to
Yeah.
really step up to the plate.
Well, I remember there was, yeah, I had one where I was basically the on call, and you guys were all, oh, I can't remember. There was something on, and basically went in that morning, and there was a rape. So I grabbed one of the Connies. That's all I had
Mm,
out of the GDs, and we worked on it all day. And
yeah,
yeah, but that's good experience for them, as well. But like, I didn't have any other detectives to help me out with that one, and I did it all myself with her, and
mm.
yeah, we ended up getting conviction, so that was good. It was
So it did the job.
it doesn't always happen that way, unfortunately.
No, it's no, it's interesting. The old yeah, detective. I think we've spoken about where it came from and what it is. So basically, we've sort of summarised that it's the people who are in specialised roles. The reason for the plainclothes. Oh, sorry. The one thing I wanted to explain is forever you hear, oh, the undercovers pulled them over, and that's not undercover. They are
No.
incognito. It's basically they're not drawing lots and lots of attention all the time. The crooks can spot them a mile away, but the general society don't really look at them. Basically, it just allows them to go about their business and carry out
Yeah.
the investigations. They are not undercover at all. They are completely on duty, and these days they're all armed as per the, you
Yep.
know, officer safety tactical training for whatever it is in different jurisdictions. There is no undercover with plainclothes police. You will not pick an undercover cop. They're not the ones who are going to arrest you. They're the ones who will be getting arrested with you. So
Yeah.
you will never ever. There is a huge difference between um, covert operatives or undercover operatives and investigators,
Yeah.
detectives. Yeah, no, massive difference. So I think that differentiation needs to be, important. But the other thing is they go, "Oh, it was an undercover car." No, there are unmarked cars, and the unmarked
Yeah.
cars are for the same reason. They're just incognito. They're just not obviously police, and that's all it is. It's just
Yeah, that's right.
most of the time I used to take the
Yeah,
white
they've still got
unmarked.
sirens and
Yeah, you got lights and
yeah,
sirens and
they've
everything
still
else.
got they've still got sirens and lights. They're just
Yeah.
concealed. That's all.
Still at the radio. They're just
So,
incognito. They were excellent as a
yeah.
shift supervisor. I used to like them at night time as a shift supervisor because my guys were in marked vans. They'd be cruising around. I was in full uniform, full accoutrements, but I was inside a white Commodore, and it was a
Yeah.
straight white Commodore. Any crook could spot it a mile away, but general public didn't even look twice. And it allowed me to just quietly go about my business and supervise my guys on the road and not necessarily get bogged myself in jobs, get waved down at something. If I drove along and something happened in front of me, I'd hit the red and blues and all of a sudden everyone knew who I was. But it allowed me just to slip quietly around the streets and look after my guys. That's why I really liked it.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are times where you want that big marked police car driving around because it sort of shows the presence, and I totally understand that. There are other times I used to like to sneak around, but actually, one point, funny thing on that, I'd been in plain clothes for so long, driving unmarked vehicles for so long in Catherine and Tennant Creek, and when I lobbed into Alice Springs, I was back in uniform for the first time in years in a major centre. I'd been out bush, but in a major centre, and we're driving around the streets, and everyone's looking at me. I'm like, what are they looking at? What's he looking at? What's this guy? And I was like, they're looking at the cops. They're just looking at the marked police car. I was like, oh, of course they are.
Yeah.
Because I got so used to
Yeah.
driving around and no one's looking at you. So,
And look, and
yeah,
that's a good test for anybody as well. Like, a lot of the times, if you were driving around in one of those unmarked police cars, like, you'd see Catherine Terrace was probably a perfect example. You'd see chaos. Like, there's fighting and everything going on. As soon as a marked police vehicle drove down there, it was crickets.
yeah,
Everybody's quiet.
yeah,
Nobody's acting up. So it was a good way to actually also see what's really going on behind the scenes,
yeah.
because presence does play a very big part in crime.
Well, presence is the first point. That's the first
It is.
part of use of force is presence.
Yep. Yep.
So,
So
yeah,
it's pretty big. Yeah, mate. I reckon we could probably just crack on a little bit.
Yeah.
It's only because I mentioned the people that went above and beyond. And one of the things I will mention, and I said earlier, that when you actually working in that detective role, and once you have that experience, a lot of people, you will get a lot of extra work. I suppose a lot of extra work, a lot of people calling up. Something I noticed, and I was on the beers one afternoon or one evening, um, with Tony Henry's, and we had to go down the bottle shop. So we're driving down the bottle shop to get a few drinks and this, that, and the other. And his phone basically never stopped ringing the entire time, over the hour that we were just chatting. Anyway, and I said to him, I turned to him and I said, "Does that happen?" He goes, "Mate, it's non-stop. My phone just does not stop." And he said, normally it's not so much people informants giving him information, but it's other cops asking for advice on what they should do, because he was very experienced, and his phone never ever stopped. The only thing I did, I related to that, and I actually had the opposite or the same thing happen when I was in charge of the family and domestic violence unit. I Because I used to review all the jobs, I used to get phone calls constantly, and I remember we had to drive out to Binjari, and my phone rang about 4 or 5 times the whole time we're going out for this follow up. And my partner turned to me and goes, "Does your phone stop?" I said, "Not really, not this
No.
time." And it's just because you're in that role, and you're basically the point of call
Mm.
if you need some advice on, especially domestics. Because the thing about domestics back then, it wasn't that I was such a guru. It it was just changing. The legislation was just changing, and there were some more changes coming in. And because I was reviewing all the jobs, I was seen as probably the best contact to call to find out exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
But those people, like, well, Henry's was one. He just went up above and beyond. He was
Yeah.
just had a knack for it, I suppose, and put him in an early grave, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny. It's a pretty good segue from detective training because it wasn't just detectives who were like this. There were. It's kind of a completely separate subject, but it's a short one we can probably cover off on a few people who we came across in our career, who who just when everyone else was in fifth gear, they had sixth and seventh and eighth.
yeah,
They went to a
yeah,
whole new level of commitment to the job. So everyone ran at fifth gear red line. That was just normal. And then you just go, righto, that's it. And you'd park up on the side of the road. There were a couple of coppers who I knew, and I reckon I can name three in my career who were
yeah,
absolutely extraordinarily above and beyond. And I'm going to name them.
yeah.
And two of them are going to hate the fact I name them. They're still current serving. Um, the first one I'll name was pretty junior on, and I don't apologise for naming him because he is a weapon of a police officer. And that's I don't know. I think he's a sergeant now. Ken Bradshaw. He was the
Oh, yeah.
hardest, most committed. I've never seen anything like that in my life. I heard the best way of summing up Kenny Bradshaw ever was never before have illicit substances caused so much joy to a person without personal consumption. He just he
Yes.
was an absolute animal for drugs. He was like a one man sniffer dog. He could detect them
Yeah,
anywhere. He could spot a dealer a mile away, and talk about his phone never ending. His phone rang off the hook with human sources going, "Hey Kenny, hey Kenny,
yeah,
hey Kenny," and he played them all off against. He was just absolutely brilliant. I won't go into his methodology. I won't say anything more about him because he's still a current serving member, as far as I'm aware. And
yeah.
but I have to give him the shout. He would be number one. He was
I,
by far.
I would definitely back you up there. He was just
Yeah.
incredible. He was one I had in mind when I talk about, that sort of stuff. Those coppers that go above and beyond. He was just phenomenal, and the guy. I'm
Mm,
sure he never slept.
no.
He was just, yeah. And look, a big shout out, mate, because I tell you what, you have done probably more in the fight against drugs than most people in the territory, most other cops in the territory. I think
Yeah.
he just really went above and beyond from what we saw. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's definitely a few others, but he was just incredible.
Yeah.
He really was.
Mate, he was at a
Right.
very junior part of my career. We would see him going about his business and just go, "Wow, that's incredible." And I deliberately Well, for one, I wasn't as motivated as him. I think that Jesus Christ, he was out of control, motivated. But
Yeah.
I also deliberately didn't go that hard because I had to balance family with the job. So I deliberately didn't go as hard as him in that regard because I wanted to balance things up. But kudos, he would never say no. He just was into it like you wouldn't believe.
He was.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, he'd work all night, work all day, sleep in a swag on the side of the bloody road in the middle of Arnhem Land with a roadblock set up
Yep.
for 48 hours straight. He would just, that was him.
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
it's yeah, and absolutely incredible. And I remember when I was working out bush because I used to come and do like roadblocks and all that out in Arnhem Land. And I remember one morning, I think it was 5:30 in the morning, got a phone call. Go, Schultzy, we need a conveyance because we've just arrested somebody and we want to stay out of here. So yeah, you were
yeah,
like it was a 70-kilometre drive through a couple of rivers and all that to go and pick up this person they'd arrested. But when Kenny rang you, you answered and you
oh
did
yeah,
the job. He didn't demand it, but it was just out of respect. He was just a phenomenal guy.
you just
Um,
felt massive obligation because you know he'd never
he
say
did.
no. So if he ever
Yes.
said, mate, any chance of a quick help, it's like, mate, bro, anything you need, mate,
Sure.
what do you need? Because you know that he would never say no, and he'd go above
No.
and beyond for you. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
he
So he got
created his
exactly.
own. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
Oh,
couple
for
of others.
sure.
There's one more I want to mention. Current serving, I believe he's currently a detective sergeant at Strike Force Trident, but I knew him. I knew him as a junior member. I was sort of senior to him, and was his supervisor for a while in Trident. Dale Motta Barnard. He's a detective sergeant now. He was another one who just ran with it. He just got a bull by the horns and never let go. From a very early age, from a very junior stage in his career, he just showed a tenacity for finding offenders, for hunting down crooks. He never gave up. He never said no to overtime as a junior probationary constable in Tennant Creek. And that to this day, he would be as a senior constable working in my team in Trident. We get a job, he'd get his crew together and he'd just go, right, it'll be this guy hunt these positions. He just knew every street in the place. He knew he knew all the crooks. He knew all the juvenile offenders, all the youth offenders by face, by name. He knew their status, knew if they had. He was like a walking computer. You just go, hey, Dale, is this, what's the go? Did that warrant? No, he's got a new warrant. He went to court yesterday. He's got another, he didn't go to court yesterday. He's got another warrant. He'll be at this address or this address. It's like, you're a machine, Dale. It's like, yeah, cool. He'll be out the door and going to get someone. Like, he just hunted crooks. He was driven by the hunt, and
Yeah.
it was bloody inspirational. And I think I was actually tapering off at that point. I was sort of getting to the point where family was more important for me. I was trying to balance life, work life a bit, and I wasn't really as interested in hunt, go, go, go. Yeah, right. We're doing another 20 hours bloody overtime. No, I don't really need it now. I'm sort of, So he was the tenacity of that fella was unbelievable. Who you got, mate?
Just Yeah, mate. I reckon like the other one. I will like. There's people that did extraordinary jobs. I mean, these
Mm,
guys. You're just talking on a whole new level.
mm,
This is something above and beyond. The only one that would remind me actually anything of the guy you just mentioned would be actually Jason Dingle. That guy
yeah.
was just he just never stopped. And I remember I worked with him for 6 months in the TAC team, and I'll tell you what, like he has just got energizer batteries. That guy, he just does not stop. I mean, the amount of stuff we actually got through and got sorted, our stats were through the roof. But it's basically because he just never stopped.
Mm,
He just had this, and he never really did major big investigations, but he would do everything and he would do it well,
mm,
and he wouldn't quit. Like he'd just keep going. So he just he was just he was great to work with. Got quite a
yeah.
few complaints, but that's just something comes with the territory
Well, he
because he
just never
just did
took shit. He didn't take shit off anyone.
no,
That's why he got the
no, that's
complaints
right,
because
and
yeah,
yeah, that's right. And look, in saying this, actually, an interesting one. He was the one that was working with when my wife joined, and I said earlier that I wasn't worried because she was working with Jason Dingle, because he would, mate, that guy would be dead and buried before anything happened to his partner.
Yeah.
He was just that sort of bloke. And but when you talk about he was very proficient at his job as well. He was so good. He was actually used in training. I think no, that's right. They wanted to use it in a training video, but I saw it as a training video. The way on how he used the taser and how he separated people in an instant because he was wearing body worn by then. And I think it was the guy when they were close to the in the kitchen, and the guy had ranged the knife, and the way Dingle got him away from the weapons and all that sort of thing. So he was
Mm.
very very good. He was switched on.
Yeah.
He just yeah. I don't know if he's even switched off now. I'd love to catch up with him and have a beer though. Actually, um,
Yeah.
it'd be
Definitely.
some great old time.
Mate, before we
So
wrap up, I do have one more who I used to love. He was another one who really went above and beyond, and he also really gave a crap and really cared about his guys, and he seemed to balance work life probably better than the other three that we've mentioned. So those three guys were extremely dedicated coppers, but I think it cost them a little bit. No,
yeah.
Dale's doing well, but um, Andy Bedwell. So
Yeah.
he was a talk about it. The reason I remembered Andy was you said Energizer Bunny. And it's like,
Oh yeah.
I swear to God, if the power grid went down in Tennant Creek, you'd just give him a positive and a negative, and he'd power the town. Like he was just, you just. Some people used to laugh and call me his choker chain. Right, let's go. We're going to do this, and he wasn't stupid. He was a very smart guy, but he was extremely motivated, and he used to motivate crews very well. Some would say he would run people too hard, and you'd bloody just about burn a crew out. But I remember going, "We're not doing that. It's unlawful, mate." He said, "No, it's not. We'll get." He said, "Oh, let's think about it different." Yeah, so I was sort of, mate, we can wait till tomorrow. Like, there's no reason to go right now. No, let's strike while the iron's hot. It's like, dude, we haven't slept in 15 hours. Why don't we do it tomorrow morning? We'll be okay. Like, oh my god, you're killing me, man. So he was a weapon, mate. He was a weapon, absolute weapon, and
Yeah.
bloody good fun to work with. But he used to be able to balance it well. So what he'd do is go, right, Friday afternoon, tools down. If there were no jobs on, tools down. We're having a party, and he would really and get everyone involved. He never excluded
Oh,
anyone. He wasn't about that. He just got everyone involved, and it was the big, happy, lively, but very competent dude, and right across it. Yeah, so he would round out number four for me for some of the most dedicated people I've ever come across. The trouble with
and
this group is there are hundreds of them, but
oh
we're
yeah.
picking out these guys who were just the cut above. Like that, these were individuals who were head and shoulders above what was an extraordinary crowd. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, these
Yeah.
guys
That's
are
that's what they were.
incredible.
They were they just yeah. And look, I think they're the reasons they stick in our minds. Like there's a heap of others that come to mind, but these guys are just that. They're just a foot above everybody else because it's just the people they were.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible and great to work with.
Oh
Absolutely
yeah.
fantastic. It definitely of every single one we've mentioned, well, except the one I didn't know the one that was with you up in Darwin or and Tennant
Yeah.
Creek. But yeah, every other one that I've worked with is just incredible people to work with and great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and very competent at their jobs, extremely.
Oh yeah.
Or
Extraordinary.
yeah.
Yep.
So yeah,
Well,
yeah.
mate, we
Apart from
might.
the two ordinary cops, yeah, we're just talking about extraordinary cops, and then
Well, they were
now we're
extraordinary.
just yeah.
Yeah. Right. No, we just keep it ordinary. I was ordinary. We just
Yeah,
did our
that's right.
job.
Yeah,
Like we just did what we had to do. So it's all good. But
that's
mate,
right.
we might wrap it up. But I mean, we've gone through, discussed the detective, what a detective is, and I think that's a pretty good thing to talk about. Not a lot of people would go. Everyone goes, "Oh yeah, the D's came around, or plainclothes cops and all that sort of thing." What are they? Why do they
Yep.
exist? And I think we've explained that.
Yeah,
We explained the
and
process a little
also
bit, what the
yeah,
workload is, what
yeah,
they
that's
actually
right.
do, the day to day work, and then also we've now explained just from that some of the extraordinary commitment. Like obviously, detective work is a whole new level of dedication, and then we've spoken about people who went above and beyond that. They were really dedicated people.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. And look, they made a difference to those people in the world, and yeah, I mean, it's a bit sad that Henry's,
Mm.
you know, God rest his soul, but he was definitely a hard worker, but he paid the ultimate price in his
Oh, yeah.
early 50s, I think it was. So
53.
it's 53, yeah.
Mm.
So, and look, to give you, I don't see things as like when death happens, it doesn't really bother me. People die and all that sort of thing because I've just seen so much of it. If I would say anybody actually affected me when they died, it was him, and it was only
Mm.
because I just saw him as this god, because of what the work he did in the police. It'd be the same, when the other ones we've spoken about pass away. It
Mm.
did hit me harder than probably most because they were just this, I don't know, like this massive figurehead of what you needed to do in that job, and they just
Yeah.
went above and beyond. So,
Yeah.
definitely.
Definitely. Well, mate, that's the hour
So,
mark. I reckon that'll wrap us up for another week, but we'll be back again next week for sure. Um, don't know what we're doing yet. We've got plenty of people in the pipeline. Plenty of plans coming up. It's looking, yeah, it's looking good. We're looking good.
well, actually, mate, I'm gonna just mention one last thing because we try and get a carton of the weekend, don't we?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm just going to bring up now. Camo sauce reckons you owe a carton because you haven't tried the sauce yet.
Oh no, I have now,
Oh, you
but I'll
have.
pay a
Okay.
carton. I'll tell you what, I'll
Oh,
cook with it. So not only actually, how's this for camo? Big camo from Big Camo sauce. Not only will I try Big Camo sauce, I will use it on a brisket that I cut off the beast myself. So we
wow.
killed one of our beasts. We've obviously got cattle here, and when we get meat around here, we do it ourselves. So about a month ago, we killed a beast. Actually, a month ago this weekend, just gone. So we killed a beast. We let him sit. He dry hung for 3 weeks, and he got chopped up last week. And I've got two enormous briskets sitting in my freezer. So yeah, I will try camo sauce on my very own brisket from my own land.
Outstanding, mate. That
Yeah.
is, yeah. Well, you've gone above and beyond. You still owe a carton, however.
Oh,
That's just
absolutely.
mandatory. And
Yeah.
and actually, I do have something to report. A big shout out to the Indooroopilly police, I believe. In all my time in coming back to the territory, I got pulled over for a random breath test the other day, the first time ever since I've come back. They were extraordinary, good mannered, like just have a joke, and they were good, just really, but professional.
Mm.
So I thought that was really good. In fact, I got breath test twice because I had to go and pick up something from the Kennards Hire, and I drove through them to get to Kennards High, and then of course they were also on the other side of the road on my way home. So I gave them two stats of zero, obviously because I'm here recording tonight. So,
Not one in custody. Yeah.
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 But no, like, I will give them a big shout out. They were. I thought their roadside manner was absolutely excellent. And yeah, so that was
Perfect.
really
It's
good.
funny you mentioned that, mate. First time in New South Wales, I got breath tested. I've lived here for nearly 5 years. I got breath tested. Oh, sorry, second time in Coffs Harbour 2 weeks ago now, down there for training. And the fella from Highway Patrol was just setting his cones up, and he sort of
Yeah.
looked up at me, but he would have just been looking to see a vehicle oncoming, and I just indicated and pulled in. And then I thought about it, and he sort of walked over to me and pulled out the breathalyzer. And I went in the window, I said, I just pulled myself over, didn't I? And he laughed and went, Yep. But then he said, But you're here now.
Yeah.
So anyway, I said, Do you want my
Good.
license? He goes, No, you wouldn't have pulled over yourself if you didn't have a driver's license. And then he put the breatho and he's New South Wales, the old count to 10. We never did that in the territory, but count to 10, had a
No.
good laugh with him and drove off. So yeah, had a good little interaction there as well. But
Yeah,
happy
well,
days.
and it is good to see. The only one thing I will ask, and this is probably not something so much on the podcast, but interestingly enough, when I was coming back through, there was a Hilux that turned just in front of me, and when they saw the RBT, he quickly reversed back and did a U-turn and took off. But I didn't see anybody chasing, unless they had somebody up the road. However,
Yeah,
up around the corner, because usually, yeah,
yeah, he's sticky
that
catches there.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
quick
So
catches there and
I
sends
didn't
it
mention
flying
it
through.
to them, but I mean they would have seen it. So I didn't say anything, but yeah, I thought, yeah, there'd
Mm.
be that'd be a suspect straight away.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, very good, mate. Well, that's happy days. I'm more than happy to pay a carton. That is no trouble at all. And that's just the two ordinary cops for another week, and we're signing off again. Chelsea, good talking to you.
That's right. All right. We'll see you all then next week.